Welcome back to Annie Makes Art School. Today's session is going to be a little bit different format. We're going to do a quick Q&A. My goal is to do these about once a month so that when I get questions from you guys in the comments of my videos or on social media, I can address them in a little bit more thorough way. So today we're going to tackle 3 questions. 2 of them are about painting and 1 of them is about composition. If you want to jump to a specific section, as always, feel free to check the notes in the description of the video where I'll break down timestamps for where you can find specific answers. Let's get started. My first question tonight comes from Dashwood Illustration on TikTok, who asked how I clean my brushes without using solvent. This is in reference to oil painting specifically. Generally, acrylic paint cleanup is pretty easy, but oil paints a lot of times rely on solvents like turpentine or turpenoid to clean your brushes, and I personally hate dealing with solvents. So my answer is 2 parts. I use baby oil and dish detergent. As you can see on the camera over here, I already have a brush that's been soaking in a little dish of baby oil. I take the brush and squeeze as much off against the edge as I can, and then from there I dab on a paper towel or an extra bit of cloth that I don't care about and I'm getting rid of anyway. It normally takes a few rounds. At this point I've already soaked and dabbed this brush a few different times, so as you can see on camera here, it's coming off pretty clear on my napkin. So at this point I'm going to take it to the sink and wash it with dish detergent to get the rest of the oil out and then let it dry. Easy as that. My brushes are clean and I haven't had to use any solvents. If you do use this method, make sure that you're careful to dispose of whatever cloth or paper towel you're using to dab, because that is an oil-soaked rag at the end of the day, and that's a pretty flammable object. My next question comes from a witch named Frost, who asked if I have recommendations for brands to specifically look for or avoid when it comes to picking out your first oil paints. This is a great question because oil paints can be really challenging when you're first shopping for them, because there's usually a pretty high price point associated with them, and it's hard to know when that's worth it and when it's not. For the most part, when it comes to art supplies, I love being frugal. I look for the cheapest option. I experiment with all different kinds of art supplies, seeing where I can kind of cut corners to save a little bit on my budget. The one exception is oil paints. I really find that when it comes to oil paints, if you get a cheap set, when you blend the colors together, they tend to muddy and just not look very nice, versus if you go ahead and pop for a more expensive brand, it's usually worth it. My go-to brands are Winsor & Newton and Gamblin'. But there certainly are other brands that are also lovely. The only one I found that has a pretty affordable price point and is not too bad is Artist Loft, which is the brand, I think it's Michaels' official brand, and they have a beginner's set that is these size tubes. It's all the primary colors, and then I think it comes with white or black, maybe both. And it's a pretty affordable beginner set, and they're not bad colors, truly. In fact, the red from that set is one of my favorite reds to work with. It's a really bold red. When you mix it with white, it gives you this beautiful bubblegum pink. So those pigments actually hold up pretty well, and the price point is not bad at all. So if you're looking for a cheap set to start with, I do recommend that one. If you have the budget for it, Winsor & Newton or Gamblin will both be better, truthfully. And again, there are plenty of other brands, so feel free to do some experimenting. The last question for this Q&A session comes from Meet Me Within Arts here on YouTube, who asked if I could go a little bit more in depth in describing what exactly rhythm is when applied to art. This is something I brought up in my Intro to Composition video, and I'm more than happy to dive in deeper because rhythm is a pretty nuanced concept sometimes to wrap your brain around when it comes to art. So the same way that a piece of music is made up of stronger beats and softer beats, any piece of art that has a repeating element is going to have a sort of tempo to it in the same way. There are going to be accents that hit really hard and some that are a little softer, and the pacing or spacing of those elements gives a sense of rhythm to the piece. This all still sounds a little bit out there, so what I'm going to do is break down different types of rhythm that might provide some clarity, and then I have a piece of art that I made that actually incorporates all of these elements of rhythm together that I can kind of point out where each one is. The first kind of rhythm we're going to discuss is called regular rhythm. If you think about evenly spaced stripes, this is a great example of regular rhythm. You're just alternating back and forth between 2 colors, evenly spaced. Anywhere that you incorporate regular rhythm into a piece of art, it's going to give the viewer a sense of order, control, kind of neatness in that area. If you take the same consistent pattern and you change it so that the shapes are getting larger or smaller or alternating, that's going to then be progressive rhythm. So for example, if you imagine a staircase evenly spaced across your page, that's regular rhythm. But as soon as you change the perspective for your viewer, where some of the stairs seem larger and closer to them and some seem smaller and farther away, you're now dealing with a progressive rhythm instead. Another common form of rhythm in art is called alternating rhythm. This is where there's a consistency of pattern, but not necessarily evenly spaced across the page. So for example, polka dots or a checker or chessboard are going to have that continuity, but they're spreading out in all different directions as opposed to consistently in one direction across the page. So alternating rhythm is going to have the same kind of uniform feel as a regular rhythm, but it's a little bit more expansive. Our next form of rhythm is flow. Just like the name implies, this is going to be a more organic, liquidy type of movement across the page. There's still going to be that sense of repetition, but it's not going to be as stringent and exact. If, for example, we take the idea of stripes, instead of rigid, perfectly lined stripes, they might each have slight wiggles and movements to them. They generally tend to have a rounder, more continuous shape as opposed to a blockier, stopped shape. Our last form of rhythm is random rhythm. As the name implies, this is a pretty chaotic version of rhythm. There is still the repetition of something, whether that is a specific object, a shape, a color, a type of brushstroke. Something is being used repeatedly, but its placement across the page doesn't form any clear pattern right away. It's a little bit more complicated and jarring to look at. Let's take a look at all of these different versions of rhythm within this piece of art. There's a clear example of regular rhythm here in these evenly spaced columns, where there's the only sense of order in an otherwise very chaotic piece. By comparison, the rain we have falling from the clouds is an example of progressive, because while it starts smaller and closer together at the top, they widen apart from each other at the bottom, giving a sense of perspective and direction. I've zoomed in a little bit here because this piece does not have a lot of examples of alternating rhythm, but I would consider the pattern in the mucklucks to qualify. Not only do we have stripes where it alternates between a red and a pink, but even within those pink stripes, we have these consistent dashes all the way down. So these are overlapping patterns, but they're still consistent. We have two different examples of flowing rhythm right next to each other, in this calmer, quieter, more watery section up top, and in this wild flowing lava section here. These are both examples of flowing rhythm because they have rounded, organic, continuing shapes, but we can see here we have a quieter, softer rhythm, and here a more vibrant, moving rhythm. Finally, this piece is absolutely riddled with random rhythm. So, for example, we have our eye section down here, where there's the continuing shape of that eye, but it varies in size and placement, and there isn't a clear pattern for where each one is going to be placed. Another example would be this squiggly red line here. There's a continuity of shape and color, but there's not a clear pattern to how it's changing across the page. I hope you found this explanation and these examples helpful in better understanding rhythm. If you still have questions or some of that didn't make sense, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to follow up further. And if you have other questions you'd like me to address in the next Q&A, just let me know. Thanks!